Jake with Color Clubhouse here. I spent hundreds of dollars on dozens of identical prints so I could tell you what the best place to get your photos printed are. What's up, guys? I'm Jake, professional photographer with 15 years of experience. I'm the founder of Color Clubhouse, where my mission is to help you make the most out of your prints. Today, I'm going to do a deep dive on the best place to get your images printed. We're focusing on the top photo labs in the US, where I spent hundreds of dollars getting dozens of identical prints printed. We will, of course, talk about print quality, but there are also other factors to consider. Those would be ease of ordering, shipping, color accuracy, cost, and paper options. Depending upon your needs, these may factor more or less for you. First, let's do a rundown on the labs that are part of the review. Printique is part of Adorama, which is a giant photo retailer. As a photographer, I've been familiar with them for a long time, and they've been in the printing game for a long time as well. Snapfish is a printer based in San Francisco. They're often a top recommendation for printing labs, and they have a little bit more of a consumer-friendly approach. MPix is a lab in the Midwest that is often highly regarded as well, and Nations is a lab based in Maryland. Of the labs on this list, I would say this one is geared more towards a professional photographer, but you certainly don't need to be a professional photographer to be able to order from this lab. Let's do a very brief overview of what we got printed. I wanted to really do a range of stuff, not only my own photographic prints, but what if you're getting something more of like an art vibe printed? So I did some of my own prints, both professional and shot on iPhone. I also downloaded some printable artwork from Etsy, stuff like this right here. This print from Etsy was a good example of colors, geometric lines, stuff like this. And I even wanted to experiment with some AI artwork, see how these lower res images would print as well. And one other type of print I did was this one that I downloaded from the Library of Congress. That's a fun place to get art prints for your walls. More on that in another video. All right, first we're gonna kick off looking at print quality. This is how the print deals with shadows and highlights and sharpness. We're going to deal with the paper quality and the color accuracy in a whole different category. To make a long story short, Nations, Printique, and MPix all perform great here. Not really any major difference between the prints. All look accurate to what I saw on screen. They are each going to get 5 points on this one. Here's the Snapfish print. It's actually a different size because they don't do 5x5 prints. I would say the quality of the print was not bad, but we do see in this highlight here how everything has kind of gone white. We're losing the gradation there. If we compare it to any of the other prints, we see that we just retain a lot more detail there. The shadows kind of match and were just as good as all the other prints, but I'm dinging Snapfish 1 point, so we have 4 points for Snapfish in this category. Next up is packing and shipping. Nations Photo Lab did a great job here. The prints actually arrived 1 day early. Box was nice and sturdy. No complaints. 5 out of 5 stars. Printique was also a great option. Everything arrived right on time. It arrived in 2 separate packages, and there was a lot of plastic and cardboard. I think it was likely because I was ordering so many paper and finish types, and your typical order probably won't have this much waste in it. But I am going to ding them 0.5 point for not having the most environmentally friendly packaging, giving them 4.5 stars for this. Snapfish was a very different story. When the packages arrived, I could already tell that they weren't in great condition. They sent them in 3 separate packages. The medium-sized one had already been kind of bent during shipping, and when I took them out, the prints themselves had bends in them. The largest prints came curled up in a tube. It did not seem the most protective way to ship it, but it did arrive unscathed. But even after having this print flattened for several days, it still curls up on the edges. Overall, those prints that were damaged in the medium-sized envelope, I would not feel good hanging them as a print or giving them to a client. Just not acceptable. Sorry, Snapfish, but you guys just get 1 star in this category. Finally, we have MPix. They were wonderful. The prints arrived on time, and it was just 1 package, well-packed, not too much excess. So they get 5 stars in this one. So currently we have Nations and MPix in the lead. Let's move to our next category. Next up is color accuracy. Oftentimes you can find the most pronounced color differences in off-white colors, and that was definitely the case in this one as well. When we look at this mid-century modern print, it had an off-white that tended towards yellow and a little bit of magenta. When comparing to my calibrated monitor, the Snapfish print went far too yellow. The other prints certainly didn't match exactly, but I would say they were in a good range of tolerance for each other. And the difference was so minimal that I don't think you could really say which one was correct when comparing to the color calibrated monitor or looking at the eyedropper numbers in Photoshop. Snapfish also didn't do so good when it came to the blacks. This mid-century modern print did have some chunky blacks, but when we look at it on the Snapfish print, they got really blocky and chunky, not too attractive. When we compared it on this oil painting as well, it almost gave it this distressed look, like the surface had been scratched or something like that. At the end of the day, color accuracy was great for Nations Lab, MPix, and Printique. 5 stars for all of those guys. Snapfish's results were certainly acceptable if you're not being super critical about color, but it did not live up to what the other 3 could do. 3 out of 5 stars for color accuracy for Snapfish. All right, we've got MPix and Nations in the lead. Let's see how everyone does in our next category, which is pricing. So in setting up the orders for this test, I did get a little experimental. I ordered some different paper types when the option was out there. So the actual orders were not full on apples to apples. What I've done to do a total fair comparison is just set up shopping carts again for a very simple order of 3 4x6s, 3 8x10s, and 3 16x20s, all matte paper, all being shipped to the same address. I did the lowest price shipping option, and the results here are pretty straightforward. Snapfish came in at $77.93, MPix $88.19, Nations Photo Lab at $73.98, and Printique at $88.49. One thing I will say though, since having placed this order at Snapfish, I have been getting a lot of text messages with coupon codes. When I went to their website just right now, there was a 50% off. So while Snapfish was the second cheapest, I actually think it's likely that you can find sales on Snapfish, making it oftentimes the cheapest of the options. In any case, overall, the pricing really wasn't too far apart across the board. To our least expensive option, Snapfish and Nations Photo Lab, we will give them 5 stars for pricing. MPix and Printique, since your prices were a little bit higher, you're going to get 4. So let's talk paper options. Here we're talking about the quality of the surface that the picture is actually printed on. A bare bones printer might just give you matte and glossy options, whereas other printers might give you tons of different things to choose from. Adorama, Snapfish, and Nations all had those kind of common options, but MPix was a little bit more confusing. With MPix, you first choose between what they call an E-surface or a metallic print, and then you can add a luster coating on top of either one of those. I ordered an E-surface with and without luster coating, and to be honest, I could not tell the difference between the two. I even thought maybe I made a mistake in the order, but this one did come with the little sticker that said luster, and I double-checked the order. I don't know, maybe it was even a mistake on their side. If not, it just seems kind of odd to me that they charge you more for this print that is essentially identical. Hopefully these videos can get it across, but let me just tell you, in person, to my eye, I could not tell the difference between these two prints. So MPix, because of the confusion and the way that these two surface types feel about the same, we are going to give you 2 stars here. Moving along, Snapfish is pretty bare bones. They do have matte and glossy. That's kind of, to me, almost like a bare minimum of what a printer should have. We'll give you guys 2.5 stars in this category. Nations Photo Lab had more options. They have luster, pearl, glossy, and linen. I'm not going to go too deep into those right now, but suffice it to say, I think it's nice that they have a little bit more options than these other guys. So 4 out of 5 stars for them. The big winner, though, when it came to options is definitely Printique. They basically have everything that these other labs had, but then they have some pretty cool specialty options too. I was especially interested in this fine art line. I use it for this oil painting print. It has this very deep matte quality to it, and the paper has this texture almost like a watercolor paper. It feels more fine art. And I think especially for an image like this, that is actual art rather than a photo, it makes sense to do something like this. This feels in a way to me like a piece of original artwork, not a photographic reproduction. It definitely comes at a much higher price, but I think for something that you're going to hang on your wall, it is well worth it to spend more. They have a ton of other niche options too, metallic, wood, glass. Again, that is an entire other video, but suffice it to say, these guys have a ton of options, and I think they have ones that are worth considering that these other labs simply don't have. So Printique, you get a big 5 out of 5 stars. And now to our final category, order experience. What's interesting here is nobody really stood out in this category. All of the sites had okay user interfaces. Every single one of them had something that was slightly confusing or frustrating. For example, on Snapfish, I uploaded the photos all on the same day that I placed the order, but it gave me this warning about taking longer because some of my photos were archived. MPix had that whole thing about the e-surface. Nations pushed me to read an article about why HEIC is not a good format, even though I didn't upload any photos in that format. I'm going to give every lab an equal 4 out of 5 for a basically meh user experience. With every single one of them, I was able to get through and make the order just fine, but it could have been easier and the user experience could have been better. So let's do a quick recap. Nations Photo Lab got great marks. In my mind, they could do better if they had more paper options, but they are a great pick for folks who are discerning about images, and even better so if you're not looking for some kind of exotic or unusual papers to print on. MPix also scored really well in my book. The way they do paper types is a little confusing, and they are one of the more expensive options. They're a solid lab, but they don't really have an edge over Nations Lab or Printique. Printique scored well. I did give them a ding because of the packing material, but I did have a pretty unusual order. I think that something else that you can't discount is the breadth of paper options. For example, there was no lab that even came close to being able to do this fine art kind of a look for the oil print. Even if their scorecard didn't put them quite as high as some of the other ones, I think they are a great option, especially when you need to make a specific kind of a print. Even if by the numbers they aren't the top scoring one in this review, I think they are still a great option, and they are the only option if you want to do some of the more fancy paper styles. And finally, we have Snapfish. They sent me poorly packaged prints that were damaged in shipping. What they do have going for them is that they are cheap. The base price is cheap, but on top of that, it seems like there's always a sale going on. If you're looking for the absolute least expensive way to make prints, Snapfish with a coupon is likely it. Quick recap, in my review, Nations came out on top, followed by Printique, then MPix, then Snapfish. But keep in mind that Printique has a really cool range of papers and can do things that none of the other labs can. These are completely independent reviews. I haven't been compensated to make it in any way by these companies. Also, before you order, head on over to colorclubhouse.com. We're keeping that updated with the latest sales and deals from all of these companies. It's always worth a quick look there to see if there are any coupon codes that we can pass your way to save you a few bucks on your order. And finally, let's keep this conversation going. I'm going to be making more of these videos, and I would love to hear your thoughts. Are there other labs I should review? Specific questions that you have? Drop your comments below. I read and respond to every single one of them. Thanks so much for watching, guys, and sending you all my best from New York.